welcome back to another episode of Tess Talks Entirely Too Much, where I, your host Tess, will talk entirely too much. If you're watching the video, this is Frank. Frank is my emotional support co-host. He's here to make sure that I don't go completely off of my rocker. And if you stick around for a little while, you'll see that I probably need someone to make sure that I don't go completely off my rocker. So let me tell you about the experience that I had this past week. If you know me at all, or probably even if you don't know me at all, then you know that one of my favorite bands, and probably my all-time favorite band, is Evanescence. I have been listening to Evanescence since I was 11 years old, and really, I had no business listening to Evanescence whenever I was 11 years old. There was no reason why I should relate to the Fallen album as much as I did as an 11-year-old. But, you know, life, trauma, all of the things, whatever. I was gifted tickets to go see Evanescence in concert for the very first time. And when I say it was a night I will never forget, I don't think that there is anything that is ever going to top that night. It was amazing. If you go to my Instagram, you can see some of the videos that I got and some pictures that I took along the way and everything. It was just, oh my goodness. Amy Lee's vocals are beyond, just they're beyond whatever the standard is, they are beyond the standard. She is so freaking talented. And something that I always worry about is that an artist isn't going to sound as good live as they do on their albums. And somehow she sounded even better in person than she did on the recorded albums, which is amazing. She did some of my very favorite songs: Call Me When You're Sober, Lithium, Like You, Bring Me to Life, My Immortal. She did a lot of songs off of their new album, Sanctuary, which is an amazing, amazing, amazing album. If you haven't listened to it, you really need to listen to it. It is so good. But it was just an incredible experience all the way around. I am so, so, so thankful that I got to go and experience it and be a part of it. I actually ended up losing an earring during the show. I don't know how I lost it because I wasn't like headbanging or anything. Amy Lee was up on stage headbanging. I was not headbanging. I was just, like getting into the music and everything, but not headbanging. Last time I headbanged, my eyes bled, so haven't done that since. But I was wearing I have several pairs of earrings like this that are like bloody knives. And one of the pairs that I have, I think I've worn them in a previous episode. They are just simple, like they look more like just normal kitchen knives, not like butcher knives or anything like that. And so I have like 7 piercings in my ears. And I had a pair of skull earrings in my first set of holes. Then I had the bloody knives in the second, and then I put like these silver hoops in the third. And then I have like a single, which you may not be able to see it because of my earpiece, but I have like a single hoop up here. So I had somehow, somewhere between Spirit Box and Evanescence, my bloody knife fell out. And I didn't even realize it until we were over halfway home. So if you were at Bridgestone Arena in section 333, row Q, and you find or found a bloody knife earring, it's mine. I don't know. That cracks me up for some reason, but it was so good being able to literally not only hear the music, but feel it and experience it and just get lost in it in person. It was so unreal. Just so, so, so unreal. It was like all of the broken pieces of my like preteen, teenage, young adult years were somehow healed in that experience. And I've probably had more like Evanescence concerts in my bedroom over the past, 20 years than I have had or than they have had as a whole as a band over the last 20 years. And to be able to be in that arena and be able to feel all of the things and sing and hear other people singing and seeing other people get into it and just I don't even know. I don't even know. It was just oh, it was so good. It was so, so, so good. So, a very special shout out to my very dear friends, Courtney and Travis, for gifting me those tickets. It was a night that I truly will never, ever, ever forget, and I will never be able to repay y'all for gifting me with that experience. For me, it wasn't just a concert, it wasn't just a show. It was everything that I could have needed in this time of my life. So, thank you guys so much. Moving on, this week we are talking about a very sensitive topic. A lot of our topics are sensitive, but this one is very sensitive and very controversial in a lot of ways. And it is the topic of church hurt. I used to be the type of person I believed that if you were hurt by the church, that doesn't mean that you should leave the church because it's not God that hurt you, it's people. And people are imperfect. People make mistakes. No person is going to be able to go their entire life without hurting someone. So I always thought that it was kind of dumb whenever there was like church splits or, voting people out of the church or so on and so forth. But after I experienced it for myself, I kind of understood why people leave and why certain things happen. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what happened with me. And this is something that I haven't really talked to very many people about at all. So again, sharing it with the internet seems like a really great idea, you know? Just totally, totally the perfect idea. So we are going to backtrack a good little bit and I'm going to give you a little backstory into like how I was raised and religion and everything. So for the majority of my younger years, up until I was 8 or 9, my family attended a Church of Christ or several Church of Christs, churches of Christ. I'm not sure how you would say that. We went to several churches that were Church of Christ. And then whenever my brother and I started going to the private school that I talked about in a previous episode, it was part of a Church of God. And I had never been to a Church of God before, but we decided to go, since we were going to the school, we decided to go check out the services at the church. And we all really, really liked it. I personally absolutely loved it. I thought it was amazing. I had never seen anything more than, like an organ on stage for music. There was clapping, there were people raising their hands, there were people shouting and people speaking in tongues. And it was just, very lively, you could say. And I was hooked. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love this. This is awesome. This is so amazing." And that's what I stuck with. So I was raised evangelical Christian, more in the charismatic realm. Now, I still consider myself Christian, but absolutely not charismatic at all. Definitely not charismatic. And I have a lot of questions about a lot of things, and I don't know what to make of it. But that's kind of a little background. And then eventually we're going to get to where I am at currently in my faith. But what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about this. Next week, I'm going to talk about the ramp and how that has influenced me. And then the following week, I'm going to talk about where I'm at in my life spiritually now, knowing what I know now after going through the church hurt and after experiencing the ramp and so on and so forth. So, but the background is that I was raised evangelical, charismatic Christian. So, there were a lot of instances growing up where being in the church was more, I don't know, more painful than anything for me. So, like I said, I was an emo kid whenever I was a teenager. That was my thing. The church that we had gone to, it had, maybe 3 or 4 other teenagers. And of course, I was an emo kid. Nobody really liked me. The other kids there said that, I had skinned cats and held seances and all that kind of stuff. And that just wasn't true. Wasn't true. And it made me not want to go to that church. So that was kind of my first experience with church hurt was from other people, but I didn't know at the time that it was church hurt because I was like 15 years old and I thought that it was just, kids being nasty because kids can be nasty, right? And just a little like heads up for anybody out there who thinks that it's okay to tell people who are alternative, you know, I bet you skin cats and hold seances and worship the devil. Like, don't say stuff like that. There's no reason for that. You don't know their life. You don't know what they do in their free time. You don't know their relationship with God. You don't know what they believe. Don't make assumptions because it makes you look like an asshole. Just saying. But after we left that church, thank goodness we left that church, didn't really go anywhere for a long time. Then I started going back to the church that I went to whenever I was like 13, 14. And that was a really weird time in my life. And I talked about that before, I think. But I was 19, 20 years old. I was too old to be in the youth group. And they didn't have any type of young adult stuff at that time. And then I was still too young to be part of the adult classes. So I was just kind of in limbo. And there wasn't really anybody else my age. The people who were closer to my age didn't really want to be friends with me because I was figuring myself out. I was still kind of this emo kid trying to fit in, trying to find my place, trying to figure out who is Tess as an adult. Who is Tess? And, you know, all of these other adults, like young adults, it seemed like they already had their life figured out. It seemed like they already knew who they were. And I was still, you know, just kind of floating and trying to figure out which way to go. And then shortly after that, that's whenever I went to the ramp. And then after experiencing the ramp, that kind of put me back a little bit. It set me back more than it pushed me forward. So whenever I came back home, church was still really important to me, but I had no desire for like the charismatic stuff. I didn't want to be in church services where people were speaking in tongues. I didn't want to be in church services where people were like running around the sanctuary and, hanging off the chandeliers, as people would say. So I slowly kind of started like pulling away. And because of the way that I worked, a lot of times I just didn't have the energy to get up and go to church on Sundays because I was so exhausted from the way that I worked. I was a waitress and I worked 6 days a week, 10-hour days. It was ridiculous. But so I like kind of pulled away. And then whenever my husband and I started dating, I pulled away even more. And then he and I moved in together after we got engaged. And whenever we moved in together, a lot of the people from the church were not okay with that. And so they started, pulling away as well. And it just kind of all fizzled out, I guess. So for a good period of time, probably 4 or 5 years, I didn't go to church anywhere. And even though I still believed in God, it was not a priority in my life whatsoever. So in early, I believe it was early 2022, maybe? Yeah, early 2022. It was February of 2022. I started having panic attacks. That's whenever my panic attacks really started to pick up. And I was already on an antidepressant, anti anxiety medicine, but it obviously wasn't working because I was still having the panic attacks and I was still really struggling with depression. And so I had switched medications, but I had to like wait a certain amount of time after stopping the one to start the other. And so I was trying to distract myself one night while waiting to be able to take this new medication. And I was watching movies, I was listening to music, I was just doing whatever. And I ended up, I was watching 500 Days of Summer. And in that movie, they play the song Sweet Disposition by, is it the Temper Trap that sings Sweet Disposition? Or let me look that up real quick. Yeah, the Temper Trap. I thought so. I couldn't remember. But I love that song. It's such a good song. And it like stirred emotions in me. And it was a good feeling. So I got on YouTube and like I stopped the movie. I got on YouTube, I looked up the song and I played the song on repeat 3 or 4 times. And then it just started playing random songs. And it ended up playing Hall of Fame by The Script. And in that song, one of the lines is, "You can talk to God, go banging on his door." So I had gone out on my patio to smoke and I was listening to that song and I heard that line. And I just remember like falling to my knees. And I was like, God, if you're real, if you're really, really real, I need you to save my life. Not just my soul, but my actual life. Because if you don't, I'm not going to make it until next year. I'm not going to survive until next year. So in that moment, it was like all of the weight was lifted off of me. And I just felt this immense peace and love. And like, I knew in that moment that God was real without a doubt. And it absolutely changed everything. So within a month, I would say, my husband and I started visiting churches because I really wanted to start going back to church. And we ended up visiting this newer church in town. And I'm not going to say the names of the churches or anything like that. I'm not going to say the names of people who were there or anything because one, I don't want y'all to know where I'm at. Okay. Two, I don't want to bring any backlash on these people because, like I said, human beings are imperfect and they're going to hurt you. It doesn't matter. You're going to get hurt, even by church people. It is inevitable. I know I've hurt people. And if I have hurt you in the church, I am so, 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 so sorry. I cannot even begin to tell you how sorry I am for whatever I did that hurt you. And I hope that you can forgive me and that you know that it was never my intention to cause you pain or cause you hurt. I hope that you know that it was me and not God that hurt you. And God still very much loves you. And I still very much love you. And I'm really, truly sorry. But we started visiting this new church. And in the very first service, I was like, this is it. This is where I want to be. This is exactly where I want to be. This is everything that I've been looking for. It's everything that I've been searching for. It's a non denominational church. It had a band. It had smoke machines. It had lights. It reminded me of a softer version of the ramp without the over charismaticness of the ramp. People weren't like running around. They weren't jumping up and down. They weren't speaking in tongues. People were like raising their hands and clapping and everything, but it wasn't like, everybody's, losing their shit, right? So I dove in like head first, just head first. I was like, this is where I want to be. This is where I feel like I need to be. I love the atmosphere here. I love the people were so nice. I knew that it was where I wanted to be. And I knew that I wanted to step out of my comfort zone and I wanted to do more. I wanted to be more involved. I wanted to throw myself into everything. And so for the first time in my entire life, I actually joined the church. I'd never joined a church before, but I joined this church. And I signed up to serve. I signed up to be a greeter. I signed up for volunteer work. I signed up for like the prayer list. I signed up for the worship team. I signed up for pretty much everything that I could sign up for. And I started greeting pretty much immediately. And then I had to like try out for the worship team. And that was terrifying because I hadn't sang in front of people since I was probably 12 or 13. And at this point in time, my husband hadn't even heard me sing before. And we had been married seven, that was not on purpose, probably 5 or 6 years at this point. And he had never really heard me sing. So to have to sing in front of someone, I was terrified. But I knew that I wanted to be part of the worship team. So I tried out for the worship team and I made it. And I remember having a conversation with the worship leader at the time. And, he told me that everybody starts out doing like harmonies and background vocals. But then the more that you like put into it, like eventually you'll be able to like lead and everything. And I remember he told me like you're like you have the voice, like your voice is for leading. Like your voice is for leading. I don't want to keep you on harmonies and backgrounds long term. And I was like, okay, cool, let's go. So I started on the worship team, and I probably spent a couple of months, like, learning songs, and I didn't know how to sing harmony at the time. So I had to learn how to sing harmony and learn how to use the all of the equipment and everything because 'cause I'd never really sang. I sang on my youth worship team, and they didn't have any of the fancy stuff at the time. So it's like the earpieces that I have in, the in-ears, you know, I bought these for the worship team because I needed a pair to plug into the mic pack so I could hear myself. And there was just a lot of adjusting that I had to do, a lot of learning that I had to do with learning the settings of everything and still learning the songs and harmonies and whatnot. So I probably started like practicing in May or June of 2021. And I think it was November whenever I was scheduled to sing for the first time. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was nervous, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I started to grow more and more confident and more, you know, happy with myself and my singing abilities and my voice. And I was, going to church every single Sunday, and I had notebooks, and I would take notes during the service, but then the services were also streamed online. And the next day, I would go back and listen to the service again and take notes a second time in case I missed anything. So I have several notebooks that are full of sermon notes twice over. And, like, I loved it. I loved the pastor. I loved the way that he preached. I loved just everything, everything about it. As time would go on, though, everything that I had signed up to do began to be too much. I was either greeting or singing, and I was getting to the point where I was just overdoing it. So I had to step back from greeting, and then I began singing pretty much every other Sunday. And then some Sundays I would sing, 2 or 3 Sundays in a row, just depending on who all was available and who wasn't. But I was getting to the point where there had been a conversation where, it was like I just needed to work on a few more things, just a few more things, and really hone in on a couple of specifics with my voice and my singing technique. Then I was probably going to get to start singing leading songs. And then around that same time, the worship pastor at the time left. And I was devastated because what did that mean for my singing? You know, he had really helped me work on my voice and my techniques and everything. So it took a while, but then they brought in someone new. And at first, I did not like this guy. I did not like him at all. But then after a few Sundays of singing and everything and getting to know him, it got to where I was like, okay, okay, not bad. So I had spoken to him several times about, you know, where I was with the previous worship leader and what I wanted to do, like what kind of my goals were and everything. And he promised that we would get me leading. He was like, "We're gonna get you there. Like, we're gonna do it." And I was like, "Great. Awesome." And it just never really happened. I did get the chance to sing a couple of like verses by myself. And there was one instance where it was after the service. It was like the closing service song. I got to sing probably, it was like the verse and the chorus of a song to close out the service by myself. And that was great. That was awesome. I thought like, all right, we're moving in the right direction. This is exactly what I need. But then 2024 hit, and I started out 2024 with a broken foot. 9 days into the year, I broke my foot. So I wasn't able to safely navigate the stage and the wires and the steps and all that kind of stuff. So I had to kind of take a step back. Then at the end of January is when my hospital stay happened. And I had to take several weeks off after that. And then I think it was March, my eyes bled, so I couldn't see. I think I did still sing when I couldn't see, though, that time. I tried to always I always tried to, like, make myself available to sing no matter what, but with the broken foot, it wasn't safe. After the hospital, mentally, not really great. And then there were just so many other things that happened in 2024 that, I did end up having to take a good bit of time away, but I was still trying. I was still hoping. I was still wanting to be able to sing. And it was something that I was holding on to. I was holding on to it so tight. Like, if I can just lead a song this upcoming Sunday, if I can just lead a song this upcoming Sunday, that will be it. Like, that'll fix what's going on. That will be what brings everything full circle. It'll make everything worth it. It'll be good. It'll be good. But week after week, Sunday after Sunday, schedule after schedule, I still wasn't getting a song. And it really started to bother me. It really, really, really started to bother me. And I began to get kind of bitter towards the other people who were being able to sing and lead. And I was still trying to have conversations with the worship pastor about wanting to lead and how, like, desperately I wanted to. And I would get, these like small opportunities, and I would be made to feel like this was the stepping stone, like this was the next step. And then we would move forward. And then each time it was like the rug just got pulled out from under me. So for almost 2 years, that's kind of how it went. But I kept putting my everything into it. I kept doing everything that I was asked. I kept singing backups. I kept singing harmony. I kept showing up for practices. I kept showing up on Sunday mornings, even whenever the panic and the PTSD had me, riddled and hollow. I was still there. I was still there. And I was just trying to show these people, like, my life is falling apart, but I'm still here. You know, I feel like I'm losing my mind, but I'm still here. I was trying to show them that I was worth giving a song to. Then in August of 2024, my husband's best friend of almost 20 years passed away unexpectedly. And I'm not going to go into the details of all of that, but I asked the worship team if they could help us financially get to our friend's funeral, because his funeral was in Philadelphia. And it just so happened that the day after we found out that he had passed away, my husband was suspended without pay from work for a week. And we didn't know when the funeral was going to be exactly because of, certain things. So we didn't know if we were going to have the money to be able to even get to his funeral. And I was desperate. I was like, I've got to make sure that we get to this funeral, or at least that my husband gets to this funeral. He cannot miss the chance to say goodbye to his best friend. And the worship team happily helped. And then I was also in a group of fellow podcasters, and I didn't ask them, but someone had shared my Venmo in our little group chat, and I had several people send me money. And within, 5 or 6 hours, we had way more than enough money to get to the funeral and get back and not have to worry about the fact that we were going to miss a paycheck. And it was unreal. It was absolutely unreal. It was one of those like miraculous God moment kind of things. So I was so thankful for that. I was so grateful for that. And the entire worship team was so supportive during that time. It was so incredible. They were just so amazing. But then come January, not even January, it was the funeral is in September. So probably October or November, I had messaged the worship pastor and I told him, like, listen, I have been trying to get to a point where I can lead for almost 2 years now. And I'm still on background vocals. I'm still on harmonies. I can't keep doing this if I'm not going to be used to my full potential. And I'm not going to be able, like, if I'm not going to be able to grow in this area, then, like, I'm going to have to step back. And this worship pastor told me, you're going to quit after we helped you get to your friend's funeral, after we helped pay to get you to your friend's funeral. You're just going to walk away after we did that for you. And immediately I wanted to say, well, now I'm really walking away. Like, but I was guilted in to staying. And in my mind, it's like, how long am I going to have to stay on this team to repay what I owe for what they gave us? And it also made me feel like if I can't ask my fellow church members, my church family for help in a desperate time of need, and I don't ever ask anyone for money, ever, never. That was like the first time that I'd ever done anything like that. But I trusted that they would help out of the goodness and kindness of their hearts. And they did, but then it was used against me. So that's whenever I started really pulling back. And I would still accept service, like, serve requests and everything. And I would still show up and I would still sing, but I wasn't really putting anything into it, wasn't really, you know, putting any effort into it. It was more just like, if you're going to only use me in the background, then I'm only going to be in the background. And that's all. That's it. That's it. So, January of 2025, the worship pastor left. And I was like, okay, okay. Now I'm going to have to go through all of this all over again with somebody else. And again, it took them forever to find a new worship leader, but I got scheduled to sing one Sunday, and a girl who had been brought on to the team just a couple of months before. maybe not even a couple of months, like right before Christmas, I think. She was scheduled the same Sunday as me. And I'd been on the worship team for almost 2 years. And this girl had been on the worship team for a month or so. And this girl got a song and I didn't. And I immediately marked myself as unavailable for that service. And I like deleted myself off of the serve schedule, and I sent an email to the campus pastor saying, I don't know how this worship corporate ladder works, but I'm not climbing it anymore. I'm not doing it because I've put 2 years of my life into this. I've sang when I was blind. I sang the day after or the Sunday after our friend passed away. I sang whenever I was sick. I sang whenever I could barely make myself get out of bed because of the PTSD. I have sang like I have been here every time I've been asked. I have done everything that's been asked of me. I've learned the harmony. I've learned the songs. I've done all of these things. And I am consistently every Sunday getting looked over and get put on the back burner again and again and again and again and again. And I'm not doing it anymore. And so that email got forwarded to the worship pastor of another campus. And then that worship pastor called me and was wanting to talk to me about it all. And I was just, I don't remember all of the conversation. I just remember him saying, I haven't had a chance to really sing with you. So basically, he said that, the original worship pastor had wanted to work with me on a few things and then, work me up to leading, which I knew. But that message had not been passed along to the worship pastor that came in after him that I just left. So it all just kind of got lost in translation. But he said that he would work with me and he wanted me to send him videos or voice notes or whatever of me singing along to some songs. And so I did. And, he pointed out some things like my breath work and running out of breath too fast and too much strain on my voice and everything. And these were all things that I knew. These were all things that I knew that I needed to work on, but I had never had a vocal training class of any kind. I was never in a choir. I was never taught how to use my voice, how to use my vocal cords, how to sustain breathing or anything like that. Whenever I say that Amy Lee taught me how to sing, Amy Lee taught me how to sing. And I just tried my best to imitate what she did with her voice. And that is how I got to where I was because of her. And whenever I brought that up and brought up that, I listened to a lot of heavier music and I sing along with these heavier songs, I was told that, well, that's okay and that's fine, but other people aren't going to want to sing along with somebody who sounds like that. You know, this person on the worship team listens to that kind of music too, but now he listens to these bands so that he can play this instrument more like what people want to hear. So you need to listen to some female artists in this genre in order to make your voice more appealing for other people. Essentially saying that my voice wasn't good enough as it was for what they wanted. And that, that hit me. That hit me because that was right around the same time that I was finally starting to really begin to heal, start my healing journey from my PTSD. And the music was listening to and still listen to now was so impactful to my healing journey. And I was not about to abandon my what was keeping me from going off the deep end to listen to somebody like Taylor Swift just so I could sing like another pop singer, because that's not what my voice was made for. And I'm not saying that I have the greatest voice, because I don't. If you go and you watch my videos from the Evanescence concert, I do not have the greatest voice. I'm not the best singer out there. Can I sing? Yes. Do I enjoy singing? Very much so. But I'm not out here like, oh, listen to me because I can sing. My voice brings down the angels from heaven and lights up every eardrum that it hits. That's not, no, no. But the way that I sing is not, can I sing pop? Yes. Do I like to sing pop? Not really, because it all sounds the same. There's no real effort that goes into singing a pop song. I mean, there is, but there isn't. I like a challenge when it comes to singing. That's one reason why I love Evanescence so much, is because she has such a broad range. She has such like low notes and then like these operatic high notes. That's another reason why I love Falling in Reverse, because Ronnie Radke can go from like these almost, circusy, clownish sounding low notes to these amazing high notes. And it's that switch that I like. It's the flow that I like to follow. So to be told that in order for my voice to be what other people would want to hear, and that it where it's at now wasn't good enough, excluding the breath work that I needed to work on, just the sound of my voice alone wasn't good enough. I quit singing, and I would only kind of whisper along to songs whenever I would listen to music. And I'm just now getting to where I'm singing along with songs again. But not only am I singing along with songs again, I love my voice exactly how it sounds. And nobody can tell me that it's not good enough. One, I'm not using it to try to impress anybody. If I post an Instagram reel and I'm singing, it's not because I'm trying to show off. It's because I'm comfortable with how I sound. Or I'm showing, like, if I'm 3D pinning and I'm singing along with whatever's playing on Spotify, that's that's all that it is. It's not me trying to show off. It's not me trying to say, "Hey, listen, notice my voice." And after having that conversation with the worship pastor, I knew that I was done. And I knew that what had happened was, it hurt, and it hurt deeply. And I felt like it was very wrong. I felt like I had been strung along for 2 years. Other people were getting opportunities that I hadn't been given. And I felt like in a church setting, everybody should have their chance. Everybody should be given an opportunity. And the way that it was handled was so wrong, in my opinion. And it hurt. It hurt so deeply. And I tried to go back to that church. And as much as I love the pastor and as much as I love the friends that I've made from that church, I mean, my very best friends I met because of that church. And we're still friends. It hasn't, thank God, it hasn't affected our friendships. But it, I just couldn't, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. On top of dealing with the PTSD and the panic and everything else that was going on in life at the time, I pulled away. I completely pulled away. I completely walked away. And I didn't go to church for almost a year. And I've tried going back to church, but I just feel like I'm not going to fit. Like there's just not a space for me no matter where I go because I look like I do and I dress like I do and I listen to the music that I listen to and I cuss too much and like I just feel like nobody is going to accept me in a church and I don't want to risk getting hurt again. And then there's stuff from the ramp that also ties into all of this as well, and I'll get more into that in the next episode. But there's just I want to be involved with the church. I want to have I want to have that community. I want to be able to be involved. I want to be able to go and worship and, hear sermons and like have my spirit fed and, you know, be part of something bigger than myself. I still very much believe in God. I still very much believe in Jesus. I still love Jesus. Even as the goth girl, I still love Jesus. I just don't feel like the way that the church is done today is the right way. And I know that no matter where you go, like no church is ever going to be perfect. No church is going to be perfect. Every church is going to have its issues. That's one reason why I consider myself non-denominational because no church has it just right. I think each church has parts of it right. Some maybe more than others. But as a whole, I feel like today's church, it doesn't reflect what a biblical church looks like. And that's something that before I started going back to church in 2021 or 2022, I was breaking down everything that I believed in and trying to build it back up on the Bible and what the Bible says. And I don't know how to go to a church that isn't biblical. And that's not to say that, these churches are, terrible or that, they're like blasphemous or anything like that. It's not that. It's just the way that things are done. And I'm not throwing shade on these churches either because even the church that I was hurt at, there's so many things that I still love about that church. There's so many things that I miss about that church. For 2 years, that church was like it was my heart and soul. I breathed for that church. I loved that church. I loved the people. I loved the congregation. I loved the community of it. I loved so much about it. The other church that I've been to, I love that church too. I think that it has so many amazing people in it. Again, the congregation, I love just the feeling. It feels like home. It feels like going home whenever I go there. But there's just something in me that keeps me from fully diving into it. And I don't know if it's the previous church hurt. I don't know if it's because this church isn't where I'm supposed to go. I don't know. I really don't know. What I do know is that I've been hurt. It sucked. I reacted poorly to it. And I'll admit that I reacted poorly to it. I reacted poorly to a lot of things that happened in the process of being on that worship team. But so I took that as rejection. And now looking back, I realized that it wasn't rejection, but I also am not going to change anything about myself to make myself more palpable for other people. And I think that's kind of where my biggest issues lie is in order for me to be able to fit into a church setting, I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have to change how I look. I'm going to have to change who I am. And I'm not willing to do that. And I don't think that I should have to do that. And I've had so many people, so many people ask me, how in the world can you be goth and a Christian? You know, because a lot of these people think that being goth, it's still, to them, it triggers that like 1990s, 80s, 90s, satanic panic kind of stuff. And it's not true. There are so many religious influences in the goth culture and subculture. So much history of it is rooted in Catholicism and, you know, Christian faith. And it doesn't necessarily it's not based in Christianity by any means. You know, the goth subculture was born out of the post punk era of the late 70s, early 80s. And it started with music. It started with people wanting to be able to express themselves the way that they wanted to. It started with, a new way to show expression and a new way to live and not just following what society says. So, my reality is that being a Christian and being a true Christian is like the most goth thing that you can do because it goes against everything, absolutely everything. It goes against what the modern church says. It goes against what society says. It goes against what politics say. It goes against everything. And then, you get to look like this and be awesome, And you get cool music taste. Like, come on. It's like the best of everything. You get to be weird. You get to be funny. You get to be dark. And also, have you ever read the book of Psalms? Tell me that's not goth. Come on. Come on. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Honey, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death every single day. That is my life. That's my brain. My brain is the valley of the shadow of death. And I have to fight those demons every damn day. And like I said, I cuss too much. So, but in short, that is my church hurt. And that is why I left and some of why I haven't been back. There will be more of why I haven't been back in the next episode, which is going to be my experience at the ramp. And that one might end up being a two-parter. But if it is a two-parter, I'm going to post both parts at the same time so that it'll be two separate episodes, but they'll come out on the same day. We'll just have to see because it's a lot. It's a lot and it's a long story. But I'm going to wrap it here for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, for listening, wherever you're listening from. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss another episode. And feel free to follow me on Instagram. My handle is in the show notes. You can also click on the link in the show notes if you would like to help support the podcast financially at buymeacoffee.com/blindcrimepod, I think. I don't remember. The link is in the show notes. It's from my previous podcast. it was easier to keep it than start a new one. So that is all for this week. Until next week, enjoy the peace and quiet. We will see you again in the next episode.